Welcome. We are back, lacrosse fans and sports bettors alike. This is Bet On Lacrosse, where we're aiming not only to be cashing tickets, betting the fastest game on 2 feet, we're also aiming to make you better bettors. I'm your host, Dan Alexander, and while we can't yet place any NLL, the National Lacrosse League bets just yet here stateside, we can check out some expectations set by the future market and the great folks over at CoolBet Canada. Joining me today is my guy, co-founder of Pro Lacrosse Talk, Hutton Jackson. 2 names. That's how big of a dog my guy is. Hutton, how we doing, brother?
I'm doing well, man. These future markets are kind of taking shape. Almost 2 years now since we've seen teams on the floor, and they look a lot different. But I think there might be some value in some of these future markets. I know me and you both like the wait and see approach, but there might be some movement that we might want to, jump on right before the beginning of the season.
Well, and that's what we're here to do with Bet On Lacrosse is analyze whatever information that we have. We're checking out to make you, again, better bettors. And, as far as future market goes, Hutton, I don't know how you kind of look at it, but when I'm looking at future markets, I'm really looking for one thing and one thing only. That is value. It's a word you're here. Let's talk a lot about here on the Pro Lacrosse Talk, Bet On Lacrosse show. And it's a major reason why I don't really bet many futures, because if I'm going to be giving the book my money to hold on to for a year or a season, I guess would be the better way to say it, I better be getting a pretty solid ROI or return on investment. Or I'm even just looking for maybe a ticket that can make me money later down the road with some hedge opportunities. And for that reason, as I'm looking at this future board here, Hutton, I probably would pass on any of these short favorites like the Thunderbirds or the Rush, because, you're looking at a 5.5 to 1 bet. So that would be $55 back if you're a $10 bettor. That's just a kind of case of a juice really not being worth the squeeze for me. And maybe you can make a better case for one of these shorter favorites. While it might not get my money out of my pocket, it could work for somebody else's bankroll.
Yeah, no, I tend to like the wait and see approach too. It's a long season. There's a variety of factors of why, I think waiting and to see might be the right approach. I mean, first off, the NLL season is a long one, 18 games, and then you got the playoffs as well. So, this is going to be going on up until May. So you have some time, and even if you like a favorite, you might still be able to get some value on them later in the season. There's ebbs and flows. Usually the favorites don't move too much, even if they do go through a rough stretch, but those rough stretches, those are the dips. That's when you kind of want to buy most of the time. In addition to that, it's been almost 2 years since the NLL was in action. So these teams are looking quite different than when we last saw them. We've gone through 2 free agency periods, 2 entry drafts, and an expansion draft. We've seen the Panther City Lacrosse Club join the league, and we've seen the Black Wolves become the Fire Wolves and move to Albany. So a lot of changes, which means, it's kind of hard to predict who's going to be a contender, who's not. You could really make a case for a lot of these teams. So that's where, I can tend to agree with you. Maybe wait and see. The reason, though, I do like the Thunderbirds at plus 550 is because this is one of the teams that was really good when they last stopped play. Yeah. They were 8-4. They were in the top 3. And they're returning a lot of their roster. Really, their only big loss is Ryan Benesh to the Panther City Lacrosse Club via the expansion draft. But other than that, this team is looking, to be the same roster coming back. They have Graham Hossack, 3-time Defender of the Year. He just won Defender of the Year in the PLL as well. So you got to remember that, even though these guys haven't been on the floor in a while, a lot of them have played in the field league as well. So they've been, keeping the stick in their hands. They're returning a high-powered offense that just got Reese Dutch added to it, the 2-time champion. And he's actually was the last time we saw a championship, won that overtime thriller. Right. So, that he's a big addition late in the game. I was surprised that someone didn't sign him sooner. They also added Tyson Bell to that defense. So I really like this Thunderbirds team. And the reason why I would maybe, sprinkle a little bit on them now is because I think they're going to be a contender throughout the season. If they have a few losses, string a few losses, then maybe that value does start to, increase a little bit and you might get them at a better ticket. But I think they're going to be around this range for most of the season. So I would, maybe jump on it right now. And they have a game against the Rush, who's also a favorite. So depending on whether you like the Thunderbirds or Rush, I would maybe place a favor on whoever you think is going to win that game. If you think, it's going to be a close game and you're not sure, maybe wait and see, because the loser of that game, might get a little bit more value on that. So maybe that's another reason why to wait. But again, this Thunderbirds team, I think is too good that, I consider them kind of much like the Whipsnakes were last year. They're really not going to increase too much. Their odds aren't going to get that long that you're going to get that much more value, I think, on them throughout the season. So that's a reason why maybe I would strike now.
No, I think you lay out a great case there, and a couple things you said in there kind of stood out to me. You mentioned the record before they had to leave the floor. So I almost wonder, and it's something that we'll have to track as this season rolls out, is, some of those teams who were standing there with a really good record, do they kind of pick that up, or with the stop and go, does that kind of make them fall back to the pack there? I think you make some great points too on trying to find some value here early, because let's say the Thunderbirds do come out and be the team that a lot of us expect them to be. They start rolling early, that number's only going to get worse. Same case of the Rush there as well. So I think you make out a good case if you are comfortable going with a 5-1 kind of odd. If that works for your bankroll, there could be some value there. It's just all about finding what works for you. And as I was looking at the favorites on the top of the list, I know you're probably going to roll your eyes and you're going to say, come on, Dan, like your Philly bias is showing here. But as far as, those top teams go, it probably wouldn't take me much for someone to talk me into putting a little bit of a sprinkle on Matt Rambo and Kevin Crowley and Trevor Baptiste and Blaze Reardon. And that's the Philadelphia Wings at 8-1. You could talk me into being that a little bit more value on that side of things. You pair all those players with the acquisition of the 3-time NLL champion in Ben McIntosh this offseason, and this team is looking like a championship caliber team. So we've established the Thunderbirds. We've talked about the Wings. We talked about the potential contender status that they have, and their odds reflect that they're legit contenders. So as you're running down the board, we're talking all about value here in the future market. And again, thanks to CoolBet Canada team for putting out these odds. So you and I, who have been, champing at the bit to talk some lacrosse here, finally have some stuff to talk about. As you run down this list, are some of those longer odds, some of those, 10-1s and higher, are any of those maybe rattling the cage for you, making you think it might be worth a sprinkle when you start running down the teams towards the bottom of those odds, Hutton?
Yeah. So, I mentioned the Thunderbirds as a team that I like, and you could probably talk me out of, maybe placing one now and, telling me to wait. A team that I would strike now, because I guarantee their odds are going to get, better as the season goes along. And I think we're going to see that they are still one of the top teams, is the Albany Firewolves. Now, since we last saw this team, they used to be the New England Black Wolves. So they've moved cities. They've got a new name, got a new color scheme, new ownership. So a lot of changes with them. They lost Callum Crawford in free agency. He was the leading scorer in the NLL before the COVID cut their season short. So again, that's a big loss for them. But at the end of the day, they still got Glenn Clark as their head coach. They still have a roster that is loaded. They traded for Jacob Rouet to kind of replace that void with Callum Crawford. Charlie Kitchen, who they drafted in 2020 and then went away in the expansion draft to Panther City, they just acquired him back. Now he's a rookie, so can't expect too much out of him. But I still think this team's going to be good. And I think at the end of the day, they still have the reigning NLL goaltender of the year in Dougie Jamieson. And I think that is where I would say this team is a clear contender, and they're the one that I think is undervalued the most in this futures market. I would have put them right up there with, the Rush and the Thunderbirds, because they finished with the best record. They were ahead of both the Rush and Thunderbirds at the end of the season. Like we said, so much has happened in between, but they really haven't lost too many people other than Callum Crawford. So I really like this team a lot. And at plus 2,200 odds, you're looking at a lot of value on a team that was right up the top. I can't believe that they are sitting behind 5 other Eastern Division teams, and I would definitely throw some money on them to start the season. They're the one team that I would, if you had to, pick one team, I think there's the most value right there, just because of how good they were, when we last saw them play, and currently where their odds are on CoolBet.
Oh man, I just hearing you break it down, and especially when I hear a 22-1 that you're making a case for, man, we're going to have so much fun this season. And I hope our viewers and our listeners have just as much fun. We talked a lot about value, and talking about value, you can't tell me, Hutton, that a long shot sprinkle on the New York Riptide at plus 10,000. No, I didn't misspeak. That's 100-1. You're telling me I get that on a team that has Jeff Teat? I am interested. A $10 bet can even win you $1,000, can win you $1,000, get you a nice little dime in your pocket. And I know they won one game in their inaugural season. I know all that, but they made some key acquisitions, and I find it hard to believe that they're going to be struggling that badly in year two with additions like the aforementioned Callum Crawford and hopefully having a better output coming in between the pipes with Steve Orleman. I think that, 100-1, you put $1 down and you're potentially winning $100. Like that one's almost a no-brainer. That would be such a fun roll of the dice. When you get odds like that, it clearly means it's a long shot, Hutton, but bets like that are what makes gambling fun, right?
Oh, absolutely. To think that, if you look at all these teams unweighted, it's 14-1 based on the fact there's 14 teams, but you can get a team at 100-1. I mean, a tremendous value there. To have Jeff Teat, generational talent. Like, he's not just any number one draft pick. He is honestly, a player that we might not see of his caliber in a long time. So,
Agreed.
To have him on this Riptide team, they did a lot of other things, in the offseason, brought in some guys on the defensive end and Damon Edwards, as well as Leo Stores. So, I think this team is going to be better. I think they could even make the playoffs. Now, do I think they're going to win the championship? No, probably not. But like you said, at 100-1, why not throw $10 on there to potentially win 1,000? Like, I would definitely recommend that, again, based on what your risk tolerance is, that's how much you should be betting. But if you're really looking for the most bang for your buck, the Riptide are a great option.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And honestly, when you're betting some of these futures, yes, it would be amazing if you hit the 100-1 long shot. But what you're really looking to do is maybe set yourself up for some sweat-free cash later. And what I mean by that is if this team is able to flip the script in the Riptide and even make it close to the playoffs, especially if they make the playoffs, you're setting yourself up for some stress-free cash later in the season with some potential hedge opportunities. So that's me and Hutton's thoughts here on the current NLL futures market. And we want to hear what you think. Let us know what team you like the best. What value are you finding on this board? And be sure, tune in throughout the season as we preview these NLL weekly lines and we help you bet on lacrosse. For my guy Hutton, I'm Dan Alexander. Cash those tickets till we talk next.